Welcome allesammans! Today we are speaking about the Blood Eagle and what the actual historical sources on it say. There are a lot of lies going on around about it on the internet and even a show made by the History Channel, but they do get some things right. So in this video I'm going over some of our oldest sources and historical records that speak about the Blood Eagle. I'm going to tell you exactly when and why it was done and what it really was. So first, it may sound hard to believe, but the Scandinavians of the time were a very tolerant people that had a fair justice system. In my opinion, even more than we have today even. Yes, they did some brutal things back then, but the punishments fit the crime almost always. And this is really a sign of a healthy, intelligent society. Anywhere in the world, no matter when, no matter where, a rational thinking people should be able to have a discussion and say, okay, this is a fair punishment for this crime, or hey, like, okay, you're going a little bit overboard there, we can't do this. Just because a culture seems to be brutal to the outsider does not necessarily mean that that culture is unfair or barbaric. When humans don't have a fair and rational justice system like this, that's when a society starts to crumble, and idiots take control of everything, and they deal out harsh and uncruel punishments for basically anyone who doesn't agree with the mainstream. Newsflash, if you haven't figured it out already, we are in one of these periods right now. But in the Viking Age, during at least pagan times, you will see that 95% of the time the punishments, no matter how cruel they were well deserved for the crime. And the Blood Eagle is one of these things. Yes, it was very, very rare, and it was a punishment reserved for the most horrible offenses, but it was done according to the sources. The main point is the Vikings were not just running around giving blood eagles to their enemies all over the place. That's the biggest misconception debunked. Also, before I go into the sources, we can look at the language. Blood eagle is referred to in the Norse sources as ristaörn, simply meaning carve the eagle. We are not giving so many descriptions of it in the sources, and we're not 100% sure how it was done. But there is some evidence that it was done exactly like you saw in Vikings, which I'm going to speak about why right now. First attestation comes in the Tale of Ragnar's Sons, like you have seen. Tale of Ragnar's Sons, they go to King Ela and they give him the Blood Eagle. And in this account, it's pretty much described exactly as we know it, like you can see here. This tale is also told about in a skaldic poem called Knutsdropa, but no info really is given there. However, King Ela's death was also told about in the very reliable Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, and in there it just said that he died in battle. So this has led some of the scholars to believe that the Blood Eagle was just a poetical metaphor originally in earlier skaldic poems. Who remember the saga writers later on in time, that's with many hundreds of years after, and they would have lost the meaning of what the Blood Eagle actually was. Some say that the original Blood Eagle was just a metaphor for dying in battle, and then of course once you fall down, the birds come and feast on the corpses, just like the prey for the ravens or the eagles. That's just a theory, who knows, so we're just know that we're not 100% sure that the Blood Eagle happened, and when it's referred to an actual physical descriptive detail, it's many hundreds of years after the Viking Age. So do with that information what you will. But even if the Blood Eagle did happen to King Ela by Ragnar's sons, he gave Ragnar a cruel death and let him die in a pit of snakes, and he probably did much worse things to other Scandinavians he came across. So here I would say the Blood Eagle for Ela would be pretty well warranted. Second time we have a Blood Eagle recorded as happening is killing Halfdan Longleg was his name, who was a son of Harald Fairhair. Now, this Blood Eagle was actually said to be a sacrifice to Odin in the sources. Big misconception alert, and really the one that I want to clear up most about the Old Norse religion. Yes, we do have a few records of human sacrifices, but it was not just the slaughter of some innocent person or unlucky slave that was chosen. Human sacrifices were very, very, very rare, and it was more of an execution of the worst types of criminals than a sacrifice. And remember, the accounts of sacrifices are all written by Christians who would not have completely understood the true spiritual purpose behind them. So just know that. In the sources, though, a chieftain named Einar gives the blood eagle to Halfdan. Now, Halfdan was a bad man. He was a king's son, and he committed all of these horrible crimes in Norway and was even banished by his own father, King Harald Fairhair. Now, Einar, he was a good guy. He was from Møre, and he settled in the Scottish Islands in the Orkneys. But Halfdan was back in Norway on a raid once. He raided Einar's home village in Møre, and he set the village on fire, burning 60 of Einar's closest friends and family and his father, burned them all to death. So if that wasn't enough, Halfdan actually comes to Einar in the Orkney Islands and stole his earldom. And then Einar came back a bit later on, and he was able to capture Halfdan, and it's then he gave him the blood eagle, and he made this sacrifice to Odin, and he thinks, at that moment, what a perfect time to sing a song. And the lyrics are right here, as you can see, if you're looking for a sacrifice song. But even then, once the king, Halfdan's father, found out, he wanted revenge, but he accepted a small fine from Einar because someone has just, blood eagled his son, but he ended up making peace with his killer, actually, and it's because Harald himself knew that Halfdan was an ass and he deserved it. Like, yeah, my son was a horrible man, I'll admit. You owe me a fine, but we're square after that. So, again, you can see what I mean. It teaches you a bit about the nature of blood eagle and human sacrifice in those two examples. We can maybe bring up one more attestation of blood eagles, and that comes in the tale of Nornagestir. It's a semi-mythological source. There's some real events in there and some fake. But here, it's actually a magic practitioner called Lingvi who gets the blood eagle, and he and his brothers, they were very good with magic, but quite wicked, and they used it to raid and burn villages of innocent, smaller kingdoms. He was eventually caught and given the blood eagle. Again, it shows us something about the blood eagle, but also very important about raiding. The blood eagle was only given to the worst of criminals. Certain raiders would be included in this category. So second big misconception I want to clear up. Raiding was normal, yeah. Vikings went raiding a lot, but most of the time it was not as violent as commonly believed. From the sources, they normally showed up in a town, collected the goods, tribute, whatever, and left. Many times they even snuck into town unnoticed, kind of like spies, robbers. Sometimes, if the men in the home village were going to put up a fight and defend from Viking raids, then there would be a little fight, but otherwise not much bloodshed. It doesn't make sense to go in and raid someone, burn the village, and kill everybody, because then you can't raid it again next year. It makes sense just to go in, take a little bit, and then leave peacefully. This is what usually happened from the sources. So this popular notion that the Vikings just came into every town and killed the men, burned down the village, and took the women as slaves, that is not true. It happened sometimes, yeah, but it was only the most wicked men who did this, who just came into the village in a rage of glory and slaughtered everyone. This was the worst of the worst raids, and it would have been regarded as a despicable act, and it would have earned the offenders a very miserable death. Blood eagle, perfectly fitting. So that's all. I know back then, previously in history, it sounded brutal, but in a way, they were more advanced than us, and their justice system actually fit the crimes that were committed. If a guy came into a village, slaughtered everyone, burned it down, back then, they knew what to do with him. But today, what do? We put him in prison. We put him in prison, so we use all of our money for a free place to this guy to live and give him food and medical care for the rest of his life. Especially in Scandinavian prisons like this, that doesn't sound like this should be reserved for the worst criminals. On the other hand, today, there are many good people who are given harsh punishments simply because they offended someone or they did something that the masters didn't agree with. Or sometime today, even people do a completely right and ethically right and honorable thing, and in return they get the harshest punishments dealt to them. You know, ethically right and wrong is not always about brutality. It's about fairness and logical justice. Just because a society seems more violent than we are does not mean that we are the more ethical ones than they are. In my opinion, with time, as we have gone on in history, humans don't get more ethical with time. We just get more sensitive, especially today, which seems ethical. It makes people feel like they're being ethical. But really, what we're doing is just letting our weak emotions take control of us to make life very difficult for others who we don't think that we should have sympathy for, according to the mainstream belief. But that's just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. At least I cleared up some myths about the Blood Eagle. That's all for today. Vi ses nästa gång.